Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Thursday, February 9th, 2017. It's a day. It's another one. Is it snowy where you are? Do you live in the Northeast? Are you a Northeastern coastal elitist? We'll check in with Greg to check on the snow situation. Never materialized here in the Washington, D.C. area, or at least my part of it anyway. Kids are just about deflated at this point. They were sure they were going to have the day off from school, and I didn't let it get too bad. I didn't allow them to blow off homework and go to sleep 2-3 hours past their normal bedtime so that they could don't worry about it, we'll be off tomorrow. Don't bet on it, kids. And good thing they didn't, because they're on their way to school. Lots of stories to discuss this morning. Daily Coast Radio is live now, as we're reminded each day by Bill in Portland, Maine. Where is it snowy there, Bill? Today, Kagro X. That's me, David Waldman. We'll explain everything in detail. Yes, everything. And we might as well start at the beginning. When two, or occasionally more, people love each other very much. I know this is going to sound a little weird, but bear with me here. All right, never mind. I'll cut it off. I'll separate it into a tweet in 3 parts, as the president has done this morning. I guess he got mad about something, or somebody told him we need to distract some attention from our having attacked judges, and your Supreme Court nominee apparently telling people that he was disheartened, and what else? What other word did he use? Anyway, he was basically pretty turned off by the fact that the president who nominated him had spent the day attacking judges because he's a judge. We've all been wondering, and lots of people have been asking me that in Twitter and email messages, what do we think his sister, who is a federal judge, has to say about all this. And I think that she's made a career of avoiding commenting on him and probably will continue. But it does occur to me now that she's probably not particularly happy that for the first time in her life, her brother probably considers himself her boss, though he is not, because we have an independent judiciary, et cetera, et cetera. He doesn't believe that. Of course, he believes he's the president of everything. And who can he thank for that? Probably George W. Bush, Alberto Gonzales, and their ridiculous unitary executive theory. He came away thinking, plus his own, generalized dumbness, but he probably believes he's in charge of everything, and he can fire his sister if she doesn't cooperate. Anyway, let's see. This morning, I don't know what he's fighting with. Who? Senator Blumenthal, who I guess is the source of the reports on Judge Gorsuch's comments, and he's fighting with Senator McCain, because Senator McCain, I guess, had some criticism of the now, I think, reportedly disastrous Yemen raid, which killed one member of the Navy SEALs team, as well as some 8-9 children locally, too. It's really pretty incredible. I mean, look, there's risk in all of these missions and everything. But, of course, remember that this is the guy who was bragging uncontrollably about how he's going to be so good at the military your head will spin. Well, right out of the box, he's done it wrong, and did it wrong because he was told that Obama wouldn't have the guts to do it, so you better. Apparently I read this morning that General Mattis actually had fed him that line as well, which I guess puts a hole in our theory that Mattis is one of the level-headed guys that might keep him in check. Only occasionally, I guess. Anyway, now with the weather, we bring in Greg Dworkin from all the way up in snowy Connecticut. How's it going there today?
It's snowing.
Yeah? Still now?
Yeah, well, it started about 5 a.m. We already got about 3 inches. We're going to get between 10 and 14.
That's a considerable amount.
Yeah, so it's amount. So I sent you a picture of my deck. You can see the snow, and you can see the birds all just loving the feeder because there's nothing for them to eat today.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know I could send that, but I was playing with it today, and apparently I can. So I sent you a little picture you can look at. It's sideways, but then again, the world is sideways these days.
Yes.
Yeah, this Blumenthal thing is really interesting. Of course, he's my senator.
Right.
And I was paying attention to that. And Blumenthal is a very cautious, almost, step-by-step plotting kind of guy. Mm-hmm. So it's very unusual for him to be out in front the way the junior senator, Chris Murphy, is. But what happened is he met with Gorsuch, and it was a courtesy call. And Gorsuch expressed some concerns about picking on the judiciary.
Yeah.
So naturally, Trump gets upset about this, doesn't want you to think about that. So he starts attacking Blumenthal, McCain, and everybody else to change the topic. Mm-hmm. Does it work? Well, it does with some outlets. Because whereas David Falkenflick, media critic, points out, this is exactly right, attack on Blumenthal surely to obscure Gorsuch's dismay over attacks on judges like Trump's. But The Hill throws it out there and says, Trump last CNN, Cuomo never asked Blumenthal about long-term lie of serving in Vietnam. Yes. Well, that's not the story. The story is what Gorsuch said. It's got nothing to do with Blumenthal, who's not running right now.
Okay.
So it's interesting that it's just a good example of how he works and how things happen. And, of course, how the friendly media to him carries it as opposed to the unfriendly media to him carries it. You don't have to make this about Blumenthal in Vietnam. It's stupid. That's a non-story. What Gorsuch said now about Trump's attacks on judges is the key. And if you got the headline wrong, it means you're carrying Trump's water. It's that simple.
Okay. Can we convince them?
The Hill?
Yeah. No.
You know The Hill. What do you think?
I don't know, but whatever they settle on, we'll see it 10, 12 times an hour.
Right, exactly.
I can tell you that.
So, it's a right-wing rag, and it always has been, and no different. And apparently they're not changing. Now, I have some things to say about that, too, in a minute. But let's just do some other things here. It's an interesting tweet that had been going around here just in the last few days. A little list for you. The president threatened a business for their relationship to his daughter. That would be Nordstrom.
Right.
The first lady filed a lawsuit about being hampered from cashing in on her position.
She did.
The president's son is going around the world making family business deals with Secret Service protection and, by the way, taxpayer money.
Yes, they get paid for the plane tickets when the Secret Service flies with them.
No taxes have been released, no business ties divested.
No.
And Congress has said they're not interested in investigations on any of this.
Yes, who are we talking about again?
So we're talking about Trump family and draining the swamp here.
President of the United States, okay.
Something like that. I mean, why would they be interested in that? And conversely, Nate Silver tweets, only 3 of 52 GOP senators have voted against Trump even once. Rand Paul and Collins have done it twice, and Murkowski's done it once.
Okay.
That's it. 99% record. Maybe that's not unusual. Maybe your own party tries to give the president the benefit of the doubt. But these are uncertain and difficult times, and it doesn't seem to be making any difference. So don't count on Congress for any kind of protection. It's all really in the courts. If there's going to be any checks and balances, it's not going to be from Congress.
No, not this one. It's pretty unusual to have a record, establish a record of voting against the president at this stage of an administration because it's mostly appointments and nominations, which usually everybody's got a pretty good record with the president because even the opposition party mostly votes for normal nominees. But
well, not only that, if you get a lemon, they generally withdraw.
Yeah. It's considered embarrassing to start off that way, and I mean,
not these guys. They'll go ahead and they'll have Mike Pence cast the deciding vote on somebody who's clearly unqualified.
On top of which, all the people who have the same problem that we used to see nominees withdraw with, and then withdraw themselves from public life entirely, pretty much. That's just sort of like, oh well, I do have that problem. What else you got? Of course, I have that problem. Of course, I'm the Secretary of Labor, and I have undocumented immigrants on whom I've paid no taxes. But I've paid them now.
So interestingly, JLF88, that's the tweet handle there, says, what do you think? Is Gorsuch's comments about the judges self-serving, or is it principled? And my first impression was, a little of both, but probably principle, because after all, this is something that Trump already is annoyed about and is reacting to. And people don't go out of their way to annoy Trump. You can see that on the Republican side. So, of course, he actually said something, that's okay. I mean, do I still think that he should be boycotted? Sure. I don't like the idea of Republicans stealing a seat. And if you can point out the bad parts about perhaps his background in terms of extremism, I think that's all well and good. But, this guy isn't evil the way, let's say, that Bannon is. So, let's just give him credit for this part of it.
I guess so. I mean, I think it's probably a little bit of both, too. You look like a principled person. It doesn't take much to look like a principled person.
If you are a principled person, there's nothing wrong with broadcasting it. If it is in your to your redound, why not?
Yeah. Armando tells me that Trump insists, it's Trump's position that Gorsuch did not say that.
Right, except it's been confirmed.
Well, so what, really?
But so what, really? I mean, the truth and Trump really don't have much relationship to each other. And in fact, there's even an interesting story about that. There is a piece in the LA Times, which I may or may not be able to find at this late juncture, which was talking about the fact that it's interesting that Trump's own supporters don't seem to hold him to the same standard of truth and accuracy that they seem to do with everybody else.
Wait a minute. What?
And that may be because they still see him as a celebrity and not a politician.
Ah, that could be. That poses a problem for our shared values.
It does, but it also poses a problem for Trump because he's made so many ridiculous statements in the process of trying to sell his programs that they're out there, and now he has to either not be bound to him because he's not bound to anything, he doesn't have any morals or scruples, but he's stuck with them. So, for example, the Muslim ban.
Yes.
He's good in these little catchy, marketing things.
Ah.
I mean, you're an expert on that too, but so he has these little catchphrases. And so he gets them out there. And Muslim ban, for the wall, this, that, and everything else.
Right.
Mexico will pay for it. Everybody can recite them. Everybody knows what they are. That's what you want with advertising, right?
Right.
And yet now it comes out that, we got this immigration thing. And he says it's not a Muslim ban, and it's too late because everybody remembers that it is.
And he keeps saying it is.
And he keeps saying it because he really believes it. But I'm saying, he's stuck.
Yeah.
Because he maybe you don't hold him to the same standard if you're a Trump supporter as you do everybody else because he's a celebrity and he's on TV and it's all about marketing and you get that. And so the marketer can say things a little bit more than the politician in your mind because the thing you like about him is that he's not a politician and this proves it. And yet, here's an example where it's going to backfire on him. Mm-hmm. In fact, his own tweets are being used in court.
Yes, that's true. He is hurting himself this way.
So it's really, really interesting. But I thought the whole idea that maybe the Trump voter doesn't, hold him to the same standard because they see him in a different way was kind of intriguing. So I looked up some stuff. And, this came from another conversation that sparked my interest. And this is actually a TED Talk, of all things, by Jonathan Haidt, Haidt. And it's called The Moral Roots of Liberals and Conservatives. And bear with me, because I think it's kind of semi-interesting here.
All right.
And I'm just going to read a little bit from it. It says, what's on the first draft of The Moral Mind? To find out, my colleague, Craig Joseph, and I read through the literature on anthropology, cultural variation and morality, also on evolutionary psychology, looking for matches. What are the sorts of things that people talk about across disciplines? And then you find cross cultures and even across species, we found 5 matches, the 5 foundations of morality. And the first one is harm/care. We all have a lot of neural and hormonal programming that makes us really bond with others, care for others, feel compassion, especially the weak and vulnerable. It gives us very strong feelings about those who cause harm. And this moral foundation underlies about 70% of the moral statements I've heard here over at TED Talks. Okay, fine. So let's take that one. So let's take a Trump voter. Let's take a never Trump voter, and let's take us. And just put us on that spectrum. Where are you on the harm and care thing? We tend to be fairly high on that. We feel compassion for others. We are especially outraged about Trump picking on the weak and vulnerable. Mm-hmm. One would get the impression that Trump voters are on the opposite side of that spectrum.
Yeah, I do.
Right? Because at least maybe for their own in-group, which is a different way of looking at it. Because one of the foundations here is also in-group loyalty. So if you're within the Trump group, maybe, I don't know, white voters.
Oh, them.
Then you feel a little stronger. But if you're not in the in-group, their compassion for others, not so good. A lot of the Chris Arnott discussions about what's going on here is he and others have pointed out that a lot of Trump voters feel like they're playing by the rules, but all these other people are cutting in line and getting in front of them. Mm-hmm. You know what? Not real high on compassion there. So they're different than us in that regard. Now, here's another. Looking at fairness and reciprocity, that there again, the fairness thing comes in. Everybody, that is a shared value. And these are all shared values. The golden rule. If the Trump people feel like everybody else is cutting in line, they're going to have a very different view of the fairness reciprocity situation than we are. We think, the other way. We think that white supremacy has been, established to the point where it's inherently not fair. Yes. And they don't see it that way. So we're different places on the spectrum there.
No.
And then here's another one, in addition to the in-group loyalty one. In-group loyalty is kind of interesting. Think about this in terms of Hillary voters and Bernie voters. One might suggest that Bernie voters are very low on the in-group loyalty scale relative to Hillary voters.
Yeah, well, I don't know, depending on what the in-group is.
Well, Democratic Party.
Yeah, that group.
That group.
Are they in that group?
Well, if they are, it's not a priority to preserve the party. And, there's other grids out there about individualistic versus group, and maybe they're more on the individual side. This isn't a negative. It's just, kind of one of those things it is, but it's just kind of interesting to think of it that way. And, the old saying about doctors, trying to get doctors to do something together is like herding cats. So we tend to be on the low on the in-group loyalty thing there, too. It's very difficult for administrators to tell docs, you need to do this because of the institution. And the docs go, yeah, well... No, yeah. It's not how it works, so people find themselves all sorts of places here. The fourth one, in addition to harm care and fairness reciprocity that Hate's talking about and in-group loyalty, is authority and respect. And this is an interesting one because I think this one separates the never-Trumpers from the Trump voters. Take somebody like Tom Nichols, Radio Free Tom. Teaches at a Naval War College, pretty high on authority and respect. And I find a lot of the never-Trumpers that I talk to, at least on Twitter, are also in this authority and expertise category. Never-Trumpers, not so much, not so high on the authority and respect. They don't care if, they burn it down. And so, they may share a lot of other characteristics with conservatives and non-liberals, but on this one, I think this helps separate the never-Trumpers from the Trump voters. And then the fifth one is kind of a weird one. It's called purity sanctity, but it's not all about sexuality. Think of it in terms of anti-vaxxers or anti-GMO people not wanting to put impure things into their body.
Okay.
Might fit in on that spectrum there as well. So you put all of these things together, and it kind of helps you in your mind a little bit profile. Who fits into what's the purpose of all of that? It helps you communicate with them. It helps you talk to them. If you have an idea where they're coming from, it just makes the whole discussion a little bit easier.
Okay.
Now, I actually have some examples of that. I actually had some nice conversations with some declared Trump people, which by the end of the conversation on Twitter yesterday, we were actually talking to each other. And it was really kind of interesting because the thing that set them off was the Elizabeth Warren comments.
Oh. How so?
How so? Well, it was kind of interesting because, as you know, of course, Elizabeth Warren gets up and tries to read something about Coretta Scott King and what she might have said and did say in a letter about Jeff Sessions. And Mitch McConnell cuts her off. Right. And, of course, gives us the nevertheless she persisted tagline, which now is extremely popular, probably backfired. Yeah. To a certain extent. But did it backfire with Trump voters? The answer is no. These guys come on and say, I didn't even vote for Trump, but I was thinking about it. But that Elizabeth Warren stuff, I am so sick of her. I am all for what Trump is doing and against. And I started to talk to them and say, what's up with that? Well, because we keep being labeled as racist. Everybody keeps saying we're racist and misogynist and this, that, and everything else. And I said, well, you're not. I mean, let's assume you're all good guys, and why don't we just direct our ire at the White House, because we got this white nationalist in there, Bannon, and that's really who we're mad at, not you. And they said, well, we appreciate that. It's nice talking to you. And we had a nice little conversation, and it was just useful to talk to them and say, well, I'm not attacking you. I'm attacking the White House. It's got nothing to do with Elizabeth Warren, just like it's got nothing to do with Dick Blumenthal. It's about Trump.
Yeah.
Trump is the one that appointed Sessions, and the issue is Sessions, not you. And Trump is the one that is attacking judges, and it's not about Blumenthal, and it's not about you. It's about Trump. And refocusing was a very useful way of chatting. So, the stuff that we were talking about all week,
well, if you feel you
practice worked pretty good.
I guess that's
won't always.
If you feel like you have to talk to one of them, I guess that's the way to do it.
I suppose, but it does come up now and again that you do feel like you have to talk to them. So, that's all good. Anyway, so there's all of that going on, and at the same time, there is this whole background here of what is really happening here. And I have a semi-long, which I'll probably spend the whole rest of my segment on, if you don't mind, tweet storm here, which was just fascinating, from Eric Garland on Jeff Sessions and the last great test of white supremacy.
Does this mean we're going to have game theory now?
Yeah, he was pretty funny about it. He said, yeah, game theory at the end. No, not really.
All right.
Because he's one of the people that started that whole thing. Strategic analyst for businesses and government agencies, linguist, bassist, conservative. And he starts out with, this a point here. Of course they confirm Sessions as Attorney General despite being a postulating racist.
Oh, okay.
This is the last great test of white supremacy. And he says, I have a theory which is part demographics, part sociology, and part technology. Why not? I was just going off into evolutionary biology and other things. Let him have a crack at it here.
Sure. Game theory.
Game theory. So he says, I have a theory that is part demographics, part sociology, and part technology. Demographics is the most reliable trend. A couple of things are going on. Brownness and post-hyphenation, African-American, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Which ironically includes a hyphen. So give me a little latitude, he says.
All right.
America's future is brown. Through integration, immigration, diversity of color, and ethnic heritage, it's inevitable, it's the future. The next generation of Americans will not be one or two ethnicities. For example, himself, he's English-Italian, and his kids, like 10 countries.
Uh-huh.
So the system, where one admits it or not, is one of white supremacy. And then he writes, oh, hush up and calm down, white people. We're here to get real. The initial binary in American society has been one English and two African. One up, one down. One works, one earns. Ugly and simple. Yes, history professors, I'm aware of how many English came as indentured servants, effectively enslaved for years, different deal. After some work, the indentured took their place in the hierarchy a bit lower. Africans were, of course, never given that chance. So, waves of immigration came. Irish, Scots-Irish, Italian, Germans, Greek, all took their place. Wasps on top, everybody else. There's been many different liberation movements and counter-movements of ignorant nativism. The fundamental pyramid has remained. And he goes on to just make the point that all of this is defending the pyramid. And you could have leaps ahead like the Civil War, Civil Rights Movement, but it's the 21st century. America's getting more racially mixed. Fewer people can hyphenate. They're not Italian Americans anymore because we're all mixed all together. Today's and all future generations are 10 races Americans, or simply put, Americans, and they seem not to get the pyramid. So he's pointing out the millennials are way ahead of us. In fact, he says so, polar millennials, and you'll find people who aren't so defensive about the divisions of the past. Race, sexual orientation, no big deal. So, millennials don't seem like good caretakers of this lovely pyramid, so technology. Now, you add cameras to cell phones, and Eric Garland, believes that cameras on cell phones has driven white people crazy and dealt the death blow to white supremacy. Because people of color have long spoken of their treatment by police, white folks have mostly ignored it, disbelieved it, or condoned it, and now you can't. There's proof. Yes,
it's the disbelief part that's the most troubling, I think. I mean, condoning certainly is awful. No one loves that people have ignored it, but the chief problem addressed, I think, by the cameras is obviously the disbelief. But
right.
Okay.
I mean, never you mind, he says, the bomb that they actually dropped on black civilians in Philadelphia in the 70s, which, by the way, they did.
Yes. We may have been into the 80s at that point, but I don't know.
Yeah. But they started adding video cameras in about 2013 or so, and all of a sudden, all these horrible videos. So white America and the world gets treated to video after video of black men unarmed, sometimes naked, shot to death for nothing. And he points out, I live 15 minutes from Ferguson, Missouri. Didn't quite get on film, but yet another one gets killed here. People aren't happy. Local police departments go and get the military gear the Pentagon gave them for, I don't know, some reason.
Okay.
And then St. Louis County Police, in their no training, get their Pentagon gear and aim it at women and children. And it gets live streamed. CNN wasn't there yet. It was a Tuesday night. You got to see unarmed peaceful civilians versus untrained shock troops. And that's because of the cameras on cell phones. Right. Not a good look. So after tear gassing old women in their homes, look it up, the global media decided to come to Ferguson. Incidentally, they were coming to St. Louis, a racially segregated city that escaped Reconstruction because it was a border state. But the brand name ended up being Ferguson. And so the media came to look at a racist system that's 400 years old but didn't realize it. And in the months to follow, even though police knew they were being observed, there is a disgraceful spate of killing black civilians. Almost like they knew the world was watching, but hell, this is the way it is, and we won't hear otherwise because... And many of these are caught on video. And he names names. Eric, Walter, Tamir, Philandro. Not potential assailants. Unarmed citizens. Murdered. Won't somebody do something, say many. So he, Eric Garland, works with the Ferguson Commission. Here's what to do. And has, forward through Ferguson, actually puts together commission thing. But there's this unspoken thing holding us back. And what about the pyramid? The pyramid being the English on top. Are we going to address the root belief, the real cause? And then he says, let's talk Obama. Had a black president. You might not like every policy. He didn't. But great at the job on the whole. That's especially true when you look at the clown who's there right now. The right about lost their damn minds. This is not right, they shouted from every pore. He's a socialist. How they wanted Obama to fail. How they wanted him to be a scandal, a disgrace. Proof the pyramid was necessary, a good thing. But while I'm thinking about it, the socialist went on vacation with Richard Branson, his pal. How hilarious is that?
Yeah, well,
so he puts up a grid here. Okay? Executive branch criminal activities by presidential administration.
Executive branch criminal Oh, okay.
Right?
Perpetrated by them?
Yeah.
I see.
Let me see if I can give that one to you just so you can look it up because it's fairly long and you don't want to follow the whole thing if you don't have to. I'll copy the link address and I will just put it over here where you can find it. And there it is at the bottom.
Okay.
So, years in office. Richard Nixon. 5.6. Well, the years in office doesn't really matter. Criminal indictments during the Nixon administration. 76. Okay. Ronald Reagan, 26. George W. Bush, 16. Bill Clinton, 2. Barack Obama, 0. Criminal convictions. Richard Nixon, 55. Ronald Reagan, 16. George W. Bush, 16. Bill Clinton, 1. Barack Obama, 0. Prison sentences. Socialist. Richard Nixon, 15. Ronald Reagan, 8. George W. Bush, 9.
Oh.
Bill Clinton, 1. Barack Obama, 0. They wanted the guy to be a scandal, he says. Corrupt, up to no good. And here's a scorecard. 0, 0, 0. Triple zeros, baby. All the Fast and Furious, all the Benghazi, all the IRS, 0. And the right went totally nuts. I see. Right. Exactly.
He's more colorful in his description, but you know.
He is, but it's a great, I mean, all this stuff is true that he's pointing out.
Yeah.
So he says, God damn it, the black president is not supposed to work out socialist statist. He's a radical. Obamacare, sue, buy ammo, get guns. 0, 0, 0 there. And all for naught, because most of his career, Obama's a cautious, talented, strategic thinking realist. Maybe too much so if you ask him, Eric Garland. So his presidency comes to an end. Nary a racist stereotype in 8 years of total class and decent success. So who's next? A woman. Are you effing kidding? We have to do a woman? Come on. Emails, Benghazi. Emails, Benghazi. Emails, Benghazi. Bill, you know. So the pyramid is about to be under some serious stress, he says. If a black guy can be president and then a woman can take over, then, well, we got to stop that. So who shall save us from this dystopian future? What white knight shall deliver us?
Mm.
He's a racist surrounding himself with racists. Do tell. This ain't a bug, it's a feature. This is an inflection point, a test. In a few short years, we've learned that a brown dude can be president and be good at it. Black people are treated differently. And it all sounds like 72 IQ stuff, the people of color. But white people are slow, okay? This is stupidly, shamefully, a revelation because we didn't know. Or we didn't want to see. These revelations have caused a crisis because if we get rid of the pyramid after 400 years, we have to examine a lot of policies, such as why does Canada, so similar to us, have nothing that looks like East St. Louis or West Baltimore? For what reason? Why do black Americans receive worse outcomes when they go to the hospital for heart attacks or receive less pain medication? Why were America's mega banks allowed to target African American homeowners and defraud them of their wealth with so few consequences? These are heavy questions. Are you sure you want us to ask and answer them? How about maybe one last try with cartoonish, villainous representatives of the system shouting at the top of their lungs, "We're racist!" I mean, this is like one big historical Pepsi versus Coke focus group, you know? Would you like the 400-year-old pyramid or option B? Okay, you sure you don't want white rich supremacy? You got Steve Bannon here, and the dude too racist for the Reagan years. You sure? So, you know what? Some people chose him, is what he's saying.
Yeah.
America's moving ahead, and the pyramid started centuries ago as profane in the past, but it's unworkable for the future. This is the one last test. So tonight, the Trump administration brings us Jeff Sessions. Racist guy, also connected to some weird Russia stuff. I guess a reminder what was David Duke some months ago said Mr. Trump's appointment of Bannon, Flynn, and Sessions are the first steps in the project of taking America back, he said on 18 November 2016. Yeah.
Yes.
So people don't make me go game theory, he says.
Oh, God, no, please don't.
No, I won't, he says.
All right.
Anyhow, now we have the super racist guy running all the laws, and we get a choice. You want the pyramid? I submit that white supremacy has been the great shame of America, one we must eventually confront. We cannot see the future without us. It's a duty for those of white privilege to reckon with it. There will be resistance, howl, screams, and refusal, but there must be a reckoning and reparations and reconciliation. Had I never moved to St. Louis, he says, I may never have seen the pain and the shame and the ignorance and the insistence that we choose a new path. Injustice in this city, meaning St. Louis, has been screamed into the red brick buildings, cried into the clay dirt, washed into the river, and down to the sea. And that's how I got my view of things, and thanks to Trump, the whole system is held up high and hideously, so we can choose. Choice is up to us. Let's choose the difficult and overdue path and tear down the pyramid. We're late to history, but we aren't late to the future. God bless America and every nation, not one individual left out. End of thread. I thought that was pretty darn good.
Interesting.
It was.
Well, yeah. Now what?
Now what?
Yeah.
Well, you know, if you see it in those terms, you know, it kind of stiffens your backbone to resist, because don't forget, we've got at least 2, if not 4 years of 2 before we get our next major election for Congress and 4 before president. And we've got to keep up the intensity. Mm-hmm. And we can't just say, okay, we had a nice march, we're done. And how do you do that when, as Greg Sargent points out, we're going to lose a lot? We couldn't have stopped DeVos, let alone Sessions. Sure, we had a lot of Democrats that didn't vote for these folks, but they outvoted us because that's what the election said, and those are our rules, and one of those shared values is rule of law, so we respect that even if we hate it in terms of the results. But how do you keep up the intensity? Well, it's commitment to purpose. And if your commitment to purpose includes things, whether it's the Jonathan Haidt, you know, caring for the weak and defenseless, or whether it's Eric Garland's point about tearing the pyramid down, these are the kind of things that kind of stiffen your resolve and reinforce your commitment and make sure that you understand what your purpose is in doing the resistance. It isn't. We're not Republicans. This isn't for power. It's for these shared common values. I would submit, and that's where they come in.
Well, yes, we are.
That's why we get so upset about this stuff.
Yeah,
You could win, you could lose. I mean, people lose elections. What's the big deal? Unless you're the one running where it's crushing. But this is more than that.
Well, interesting. I don't know where. I still am not sure how to feel about Eric Garland. I guess just generally speaking.
Oh, that may be so.
Yeah.
But look at the message, not the messenger.
Okay. I'm willing to accept the message. I mean, certainly lots of it rings true. I don't know. I'm not certain what it is. I guess maybe it's still leftover annoyance at game theory. I guess that's it.
And he deserves it. But the fact is, he's right. Look, you step back and say the fact that there are videos on cell phones really has changed everything.
Yes, that's no doubt about that. I can't. I would have no interest in disputing that. I think that's been a tremendous success in getting people to wake up to the fact. I mean, not everybody. Certainly there are people who have actually dug in their heels. There's complete idiots who say that it's fabricated, staged, photoshopped, crisis actors, what have you.
Yeah, they say that about Newtown, too. We know what to think about people like that.
I mean, there's nothing you can do about them. But, I mean, well, okay, so I know of a lot of people have had to confront the reality but I guess I'm still waiting for the next stage of it. People say, yeah, it's true. And then what happens? Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, that's the work of those of us who are supposed to turn this into policy and action, I guess. But this is a tough one, and maybe because of the enormity and the enormous weight of this pyramid. Well, okay, we recognize that this is wrong, but
yes,
what a huge pyramid! Oh my God!
That is a wonderful, wonderful point, because until you realize the enormity and the weight of the pyramid, then you appreciate. Once you do that, you appreciate how difficult it is to get rid of it.
Yeah,
it's big.
Yes.
It weighs a lot. You can't just push it aside.
No, you can't. And I guess it might require, for people who are slow learners, it requires a certain.
You mean white people? Yeah.
Yeah, a certain tact in saying, "Oh, okay, I get the point." Clearly, the basis of the accusation of white privilege is true. Given that there's still this enormous negative reaction to it.
And you can see why.
Yeah.
I mean, because, again, this is one of the things that, annoying though it may be, Chris Arnott will bring up. Here you have folks living in a trailer who are white and saying, where's my privilege?
Yeah.
And you could say, well, relative to everybody, well, forget about relative. Look at where I am. I don't buy it. Mm-hmm. And so you can understand why it's a hard sell, even if you still agree that the general principle is true.
Yeah. Yes, and so I guess there needs to be some way of moving the ball or finding some nuanced way, and it's difficult, particularly with.
And that's what we've been talking about for the whole past 2 weeks. You're right; it's incredibly difficult, and just because you can do it with 2 people doesn't mean you can do it with 92,000 or million people, or however many wound up voting for Trump in the first place. Mm-hmm. And the fact is, it is really difficult, but worth doing. I think so. Hard, absolutely. Going to happen in a couple of weeks? No. Worthy project? I think it's pretty good purpose.
Yes, likely true. I can't imagine getting through to them via Twitter either. I bet they're not listening.
Yeah, that's true, but what you do is you get amplifiers through Twitter. You get reporters. You get reporters who you can say to people on the Hill, for example, or even if not the Hill, then the 90 other reporters looking at the story saying, this Gorsuch thing isn't about whether Richard Blumenthal did or did not do something in Vietnam. This thing is about what Gorsuch is saying about Trump's attack on judges. And Armando points out via Twitter, listen, Gorsuch isn't exactly a saint here, and he's not exactly the greatest candidate either. Absolutely, all true. Just taking this completely out of context because it's making a specific point. And again, the point is about Trump. So I have no issue whatsoever for people who wish to boycott Gorsuch because of his own views. And, I think that that's a more effective way of doing it than I'm saying no just because Republicans said no to Merrick Garland. Uh-huh. I don't think that that's going to fly. But if you can find the points about Gorsuch that you just find anathema, that's great. Highlight them, and hopefully that'll come out at the hearing. And I think that the major reason that you have to have these hearings is to dig in on authoritarianism, white supremacy, and what Trump is doing. And I think that should be the focus of every hearing that we have. Because that's what the White House is doing, and I think that's what I think that the guns need to be trained on the White House myself.
Well, it's interesting. This is a communications theory that, I guess this is the alternative game theory. There's communications theory. And it's funny because,
communications theory is so much more satisfying than game theory.
It brings me back to this theory that I heard in one of the many sessions of media training that I've been through, most of which I just have never really applied, but, And maybe because it's just so uncomfortable for me in many cases, because, I get into my fights pretty well, and it takes a lot to move me to that kind of anger, but once I'm there, getting me out of it is no small thing. But we were, always counseled, well, one of the things you want to do, particularly with people who are dubious of your position, and here we were probably speaking of people who would eventually become Trump voters, though this was 2009, perhaps. But the theory of, what you want to do with these kind of people is you want to find a way to expand the circle to include them. And then once you've brought them into the circle, find some area of agreement, whether that's the shared values thing or I understand that you are, for instance, put off by the idea of white privilege. But let me try a larger concept where we can get you to agree, and then once you're inside and you make that agreement to join that circle, we can differentiate and pare down and then make the point. It's in the face of course, then another 8 years of Tea Party style protest, and then Trump voters and their particular style of protest. It's the idea of maintaining the calm and presence of mind in the face of the insanity. At some point you begin to wonder whether it's all worth it, particularly if you try to move people inside the circle by saying, well, we all agree, for instance, that this is green, right? No, it's been photoshopped. All right, well. Now
can't even do that.
Yeah,
Parlio makes a point on Twitter I just see right now, which I think is also a good one, and says that people will be happier to oppose systemic racism than recognize personal failure if accused of being a racist. That gets back to the shaming thing that I've been talking about, and I think that's absolutely true.
It's very similar, yeah. When you do, it's very much the same thing. You can't start a conversation that's fruitful by saying you're a racist. Well,
maybe.
I'm convinced of the fact that it could work.
I almost convinced Armando.
But convinced of the value of doing it with everybody, I can't get to. But
well, pick and choose your targets there.
Yeah. Now Armando is ready to explode, and I suppose we should let him do that.
Oh, is this over Gorsuch?
Gorsuch and everything, all of this. He's clearly got some. We might as well have him come on in. Maybe I don't know whether you can stick around to hear any of it, but if not, you can catch it on the podcast certainly.
Yeah, I will catch it on the podcast later. Okay. Armando tweeted, and he's quite right, that Gorsuch, is its own issue, and I don't dispute that whatsoever. True. It was just talking about this little tiny thing out of context. But as far as the bigger picture there, I'd love to hear what Armando thinks about Eric Garland's points.
Well,
and if you want to put it in the broader context here, it's another reminder that whatever we do, we are not and cannot and should not be abandoning people of color on our side.
No. Well, that's impossible. Can't be done. You can't survive.
Couldn't and shouldn't be done.
No. I'll put it in the most basic possible way. I could speak to you about the ethics of it, but just plain pragmatic terms, you're doomed.
It won't work.
You're finished. Forget it.
Don't even
Leave.
go there. Absolutely
Quit
right.
the country.
Okay.
All right.
Well, I think maybe I'll sum up there and let Armando have his own take about it. And you know what? It's interesting stuff, and different takes on the same topic or different takes on different topics make for interesting shows.
There are different
people.
This is
Kagro in the morning, and it's always interesting because Kagro's interesting. That's you, David Waldman. This is Greg Dworkin speaking with my friend David Waldman. Thanks so much for having me on. Little abstract stuff here, but I think it's all relevant. And none of it is game theory. So take care, and I will be back with you on Monday.
All right. Very good. Thanks. Good luck with the snow. Will it melt quickly, or are you going to get warmed up over the weekend?
Solar plowing? No, we have to have actual plowing.
Okay.
And look, when you got 14 inches, it doesn't matter how warm it gets. It's going to be a lot there.
Unless it's polar ice cap, in which case, forget it.
Yeah, exactly right. Take care, and I'll talk to you on Monday.
Okay. Thanks very much. Have a good weekend. And we'll catch up with you then. Let's see. Armando, the door is, it's open. Calm down. I see what you mean. I think I'll preface this whole thing by saying that there are some people for which this theory will work, and it's a narrow slice. And there's some slice for whom no theory will work because they don't want to hear it ever. But we can, if you want to come on, spend some time, we can critique these things. I also think I will point out for you, just to put this out on the table in case we forget to get to it, you had a very different interpretation of the clarification, the confirmation, the additional comments that came out of the Gorsuch camp. Gorsuch has his own camp now. And it's worth pointing out that it's worth pointing out that it's not entirely clear whether at this point Gorsuch is owning up fully to what it is reported that he said. And I would say that it puts in some doubt, and we all probably guessed that it was in some doubt, that he would come to his hearings and just flat out repeat this. I think probably not. P.S. One other point, I guess we'll just to clarify a factual issue, so this won't take long. Yes, the move bombing in Philadelphia happened in 1985, Sandra tells me, and if you'd like to check in on Sandra, well, hang on, I'll give you the Twitter address. It's Mignog63, and I feel less than qualified to comment on that one, but there you have it. So follow along, but thanks, Sandra. Thanks. I just want to acknowledge that you're listening and give us the correct fact on the date of the move bombing. That's early second administration Reagan. That's well into the 80s. Pretty amazing. Okay. All right. Ready, Armando?
Yeah.
All right.
Good morning.
Good morning. I know you're steaming. Yes, you can have 10 minutes to read that.
I hate Chris Arnade, and I hate when Greg channels him.
Well, he knows that now.
The fundamental problem with Greg's theories on this, okay, let's say you can get 100 votes or 1,000 or 10,000 spread over 50 states. It just doesn't do it. You know what the Trump white working class voter, the Chris Arnade voter, wants? What's what Joe Manchin did? Joe Manchin voted for Sessions for AG.
Yeah.
That's how you win him over.
Okay. Well, what do you mean? Win him to what? Did we win him?
Well, Manchin thinks that's smart. I'm not going to quibble with Manchin. He's in West Virginia, for Christ's sake. It's going to be hard as heck for any Democrat to win there. And the West Virginia Trump voter.
Yes.
Doesn't want to hear, I don't think you're racist. I think Trump and Sessions are racist. They don't care. They identify with Trump and Sessions. When you attack them, you're attacking that voter.
Okay. You may not be able to get anywhere by saying, I don't think you're a racist. Trump's a racist. And they say,
not in any appreciable way.
Too. Yeah,
Look,
it's
ugly stuff. I've said to people this, and it's just they don't want to deal with it. This is a very tough dilemma. This is a very tough dilemma because of the Electoral College, the Senate, and gerrymandering. We've got to deal with this problem. There are more of us than them, I think, is something Greg has said, and he's right. But we have these anachronistic, anti-democratic institutions that empower a minority which is racist. Yes, Greg, they are racist.
He just says you can't tell them.
Embrace racism. Look, the whole notion of it is somehow, this is the assumption, the starting point of all these discussions is they don't like Democrats. That's why they went for Trump. That's only partly true. Trump got higher white vote than any Republican before. And it wasn't just a recoil from Hillary Clinton. They embraced what he was saying. He validated their racism. And they want that. I always go back to this, but in the 1990s, Bill Clinton did repugnant things to appease these folks. He felt their pain. He talked about Sister Souljah, and he talked about playing by the rules, and he talked about crime and welfare reform. That wasn't some accident. That was ugly politics. And he needed to do it to win.
All right.
It's the same dynamic now in certain areas of the country. And because of our undemocratic and anachronistic institutions, which I've named before, we have to deal with it. How? I don't know. So I can't really get mad at Greg trying to be nice to them individually, one by one. That's okay. No harm, no foul, whatever.
All
but
right.
It's not going to solve your problem.
Not quickly, that's for sure.
Or
maybe not ever, but yeah. I mean,
if people change, they change, and then of course that's great.
Yeah,
but
I mean, there's a good prescription in it for personal interaction. Certainly, I can't imagine a good outcome from "Hi, how you doing?" Well, you're a racist, but let's talk.
No, of course not. Listen, I don't talk to them, and I'm doing everybody a favor by not talking to them because I will entrench them against us. So I know I'm not, as you said the other night, I'm not the guy that we're sending out to do this, and I totally agree with that. But I also think you got to be realistic about it. In some ways, this DNC chair thing is so ridiculous. But I am now pretty firmly in the Ellison camp because,
okay,
and I'll tell you why.
Sure.
We need to let that so-called economic message play and see if that's going to work. And the people who are agitating about it won't ever accept an economic message from Democrats they don't trust, and they don't trust Tom Perez. And there's, frankly, he had a meltdown yesterday, which was ridiculous, and he's debased himself, and he just needs to go away. He never should have gotten in, really, in my view. There was no need for that. There was consensus. Let Ellison do it. Frankly, DNC chair, in my view, doesn't matter. I really don't think I care. But if it convinces a cohort of voters who are actually not racist, but hate the rest of us in the Democratic Party, not us, meaning us on my side, David, not you, we say, okay, you take the wheel. And let's see how you do. Try your message. I'm very skeptical it will work. In that sense, I think if we have success in 2018, it'll be because of Trump's failures, not because of anything we do. I mean, this is not new. My own theory is we won in 2006 not because we had some great message. We won because Bush completely tanked everything.
Yeah.
Especially the Iraq War. Everybody's and their mothers tried to take credit for that, and it's just crazy. 2006, 2008, we won because of Bush. And what happens when you're the in party? You lose seats, and we were especially vulnerable because part of the coalition was some group of voters who switched over because of Bush and possibly because of Obama, and they were basically. We were very vulnerable on that segment anyway. The idea of the emerging Democratic majority, it hasn't been disproven. Again, Hillary won the popular vote, or as Glenn Greenwald called it this morning, the meaningless popular vote.
Okay.
So, seriously, that's what he wrote.
Well,
can you imagine writing those words?
It wouldn't be my choice, but I mean, it didn't work. So he's got a point.
It doesn't work because Electoral College is a anti-democratic, ridiculous institution that has no place in a democracy. I mean, and he talks. Greenwald goes on about systemic problems in the Democratic Party. There's a systemic problem in our democratic system in the United States. That's why we lost. There's more people voting for Democrats than voting for Republicans. A failed party that gets the most votes is only failed in the United States of America. There is not another country in the world where you would call that a failed a failed political party. You know who's a failed political party? It's the Jeremy Corbyn-led Labour Party in the United Kingdom, the one that Glenn Greenwald loves so much. I mean, this is just nonsense. But we have these problems because we have this terrible system. That's the first thing you have to consider, in my view, when you talk about what should we do. Okay, well, then what's the problem? Why is this system causing us trouble? Well, because we have these things called states, and a lot of these states are predominantly white. The Midwest is an issue. I don't know what the solution is. I don't think this is necessarily a short-term problem. It could be a long-term problem. But it's not a problem of getting more people to vote for us and against them. The problem is the structure for us. And people will say, well, that's what it is. Well, okay, that's what it is. But politics is about getting people to vote for you, except in this case. Because here we got more people to vote for us at every level, and we lost. So that's not your typical political problem. Your typical political problem, how can I get more people to vote for me? How can I get more votes than the other guy? Well, that's not our problem here. We're getting it on a national basis. It's this system we have. Okay, I understand we have to work with it, but don't start your analysis by saying this is because our message failed. It only failed because of an anachronistic, undemocratic institution that is unique and uniquely stupid. And understand that. Okay, so, well, now we know that. So what do? We got Sherrod Brown in Ohio. Tough race coming up, no doubt about it, because Ohio is Trump territory. And frankly, it was the entire election. We sort of deluded ourselves into thinking it was competitive. I thought it wasn't. Same with Iowa. Iowa didn't just suddenly turn. Mm-hmm. Ohio didn't suddenly turn. Scott Walker's the governor of Wisconsin, for Christ's sakes, and has been now for a long time. Michigan has this Snyder. We didn't suddenly lose this because of Hillary Clinton in 2016. You've got to deal with the reality of it. And what is it that a white, no college, $50,000 or less income want? Well, he says he wants things to be better, but you know what? Things got better. In Ohio, in Indiana, in Michigan. General Motors had a $9 billion profit report last year and gave out $12,000 in profit sharing to all its employees. Democrats, particularly the Democratic president of the United States at the time, Barack Obama, is why that happened. There is a direct line. He saved General Motors.
Yeah.
So don't tell me their life isn't better. It is better.
Well, that's not necessarily an answer either. I mean,
why not?
Well, it's true, and you can point to it. I mean, it's just one of those basic human problems we have. Well, your life is better. Well, I want it more better. The grass is greener over there. I want some of that. I feel like I got $12,000. I wanted $50,000. I wanted $1 million. That guy got $1 million bonus.
I want it better,
yeah.
And it's not better because
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I know.
Yeah, I do know. It's because we're favored. This is what they think. Yeah. You've got to deal. They don't want to call themselves racist, but This is what they think. And you're deluding yourself if you don't deal with this. They think there's too many special favors for non-white people and women and gays and immigrants and Muslims. That's why they're not doing better. This is not a new story. The racist strain in populism, especially economic populist movements, is as old as our country. I don't need Chris Hardnade to explain this to me. I know the history. If you know the history, you don't need quirky silliness from Chris Arnett. There's nothing to be learned from that guy. Everything that he says is stupid. Everything. Wow. And it galls me that anybody wants to look to this man for some way forward. He has nothing to offer us. Okay? So be nice to them on an individual level? Fine. Feel their pain? Fine. Try it. Go see if that works. But when it doesn't, then what are you going to do?
Yeah, I don't know. Some people can make it work. I don't know. Bill Clinton made it work. I do feel
yes,
you do.
Bill Clinton did more than Joe Manchin makes it work. Joe Manchin makes it work. What, do you want to emulate Joe Manchin?
No.
Well, he's got the best answers.
So far. Well, I guess we'll have to see.
Jim Webb would make it work. Jim Webb should be the DNC chair.
No. Well,
who's for that?
Nobody. And
nobody.
Jim Webb only barely made it work.
So no one's dealing with this.
I mean, Jim Webb made it work by what, like 20,000 votes during the wave year in Virginia?
Yeah, in 2006.
Right.
You know, the reality is Jim Webb didn't make it work. He basically got what a Democrat probably would have gotten anyway.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is Jim Webb, if you look at his favorables, he has the message that Manchin applies. And that's what, if you want to go that route, that's what it's going to take in my view. No one wants to do it. And I totally agree with not wanting to do it. I just don't think this hair shirt nonsense that somehow it's something Democrats did in terms of delivering performance and improving people's lives. The unemployment rate was 10%. It's 4.7 now. Don't tell me Obama didn't make things better. Of course he did.
Right, but again, it's also a matter of telling an individual that you happen to be speaking with that you think you can somehow recapture. Well, yes, you don't have a new job, but half of the people who were in your shoes last year now do have jobs. You don't, but they do, and I don't see how they're not going to get mad at that. But
yeah, fair enough. Okay, we all get mad, and then what appealed to them? What made them move?
The ridiculous promise that you just sit here and I'll go get a job for you and bring it back. You
know, I think people are wrong about that. They don't really believe he's going to bring back jobs. In this sense, they actually do have their finger on something. What Trump offered them was validation for how they feel about other people.
Probably largely. I think there probably are people who somehow believe that they're going to get some kind of job. I don't know why, but they do. But yeah, otherwise, yeah, I would say, yeah, deep down, if you could somehow get them to drill down and look at it, they would say, yeah, okay, well, even if I don't get a job, the point is I feel this way, and it sounds to me like he feels that way, and wouldn't it be great if someone who felt our way was president? Because, I don't know, some unknown number of things would happen that would be good.
That's exactly what happened.
Right, and in reality, I mean, and here's where you come in as the Eastern elitist to say the reality is the reason why nobody who thinks like you has ever been president is because everybody knows that would be a disaster. It would be a disaster.
I think it's important to realize that the resistance movement and this notion of wooing these people are completely at cross purposes.
No, that's true.
You can't be for the resistance and then say, but I'm going to reach out to these people who want what Trump is offering.
You got to send somebody else.
Well, I don't know who you send. I don't know what you do. I mean, devolving it is really the whole point. Listen, Manchin voted for Sessions. I don't criticize him for that. I really don't.
I do, but I know why he did it. I'm not loud.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's West Virginia.
Yeah, although I also, I mean, at the same time, I said last night when it happened, when they were casting the votes, I said, I'm not certain. Certainly none of the things that you're supposed to say out loud are reasons why you did it are true. There's nothing about the Attorney General's portfolio that is going to be about magically bringing back coal jobs, which frankly sucked anyway. to West Virginia, and there's nothing about his portfolio that's going to address your economic anxiety either.
Exactly. I think that makes my point.
So, I mean, that's all true. I don't know.
Neither does the Muslim
However,
ban.
yes, that's another thing. But they feel like it does, and I don't know. I mean, if you can trade that for food or whatever it is you want to spend your money on.
Let me put it this way. I think Manchin knows more about it than me or Greg or Chris Arnade. And what did he do? He decided the thing that he's going to do for reach out to Trump voters is vote for Jefferson Beauregard Sessions for Attorney General. That's his reach out to Trump voters. He's won elections in West Virginia. Maybe we should listen to him a little bit about what's behind the Trump support of these people.
Yes, maybe. On the other hand, that maybe that he's won his last election in West Virginia.
He probably has won his last election in West Virginia, but not because of that. He's probably just not going to be able to do enough.
Mm-hmm. And that's probably, and I guess that gets back to I want more. I want you to
I want
be
more
me.
Racism. Yeah. You're not racist enough for me.
That could be it too. I will say this: the value I find in, if any, in things like Chris Arnade's explorations is to say, okay, if I felt like the people I'm reading reports about were interested in developing the same kind of empathy for others that I'm supposed to feel having read this, that would be interesting. But since I don't believe they are, despite the fact that they feel very genuine, warm fellowship in their church and have very nice trucks or whatever that I'm learning about and have really great heart-to-heart conversations in the diners, I also just don't think that, if for instance, I don't like being called a racist. I understand. I get it. That's not going to make me move. You're absolutely right. I would feel the same way. In fact, I feel the same way myself right now when you say I'm an Eastern elitist. I don't feel elite. You don't feel like you've got white privilege in your trailer? I don't feel like an elitist in my townhouse. What do you think about that?
Yeah.
No, well, that's ridiculous because your townhouse costs, as much as my whole trailer park. And I live here and all the money goes right out of my pocket and I have as much in my pocket as you do. I live in an expensive area and I do the things I need to do to find the money that it takes to make ends meet, but that's it. How are we different? Well, you don't even know anybody that has a pickup truck. Well, I do. They're right over there.
I don't get that, but I'll tell you this.
Thing.
It's funny because it's a totally class-based approach that you can't really put that layer in voting patterns in the United States. White working-class voters have been voting Republican for quite a while. This is not a new phenomenon. It went higher in 16 than it had been in 12. By 3 or 4 points. Mm-hmm. And that was the difference in a bunch of states. But the other difference that people forget, and it's totally reasonable expectancy, it's just the way it's human nature. We had lower African American support, both in percentages and in total vote. That hurt.
Yeah.
Why isn't anyone trying to figure out why that happened? Well, because we know. Because it wasn't Obama on the ballot. We get that. So we think, what? Maybe we can get those voters back? What? No one's doing any hard push to make sure we get every single person of color to vote. Why is that not a strategy? Why is it that we're, frankly, picking the harder way of getting there? I don't know. But
but there's a point in that too. I guess if you could, I wonder if you could find the right way of doing this or the right people to help you with the campaign. I suppose in communities of color that it might be an interesting tack to say, we've been here before, and we keep saying your vote counts, and you guys say, but it doesn't.
Yeah, we say the same thing every
right. But I want you to take a good hard look at the Trump election and the Trump administration. Not even so much because it's anathema to everything you stand for. Not so much because it's determined to exterminate you, although that's a pretty good reason. But you've faced that almost your entire lives and your entire existence. And it's always been true to a greater or lesser extent. Now it's to a greater extent now, and that's an emergency, and that's why I'm here. But what I really want you to take away from this is a cohort of the American electorate, the white American electorate, that always felt one thing in common with you. They won't acknowledge that it's in common with you, but it is. It happens. And you both always figured they're never going to elect somebody like me. They're never going to elect somebody who thinks like me. Never going to elect anybody who really knows how it is here.
Yep.
But then they all got together because they nominated, and it would take a ridiculous clown, truly a ridiculous white clown, to really campaign on what they really felt at the gut level. No one would ever dare do it. But some idiot did it because he had nothing to lose, because he was, sitting on somehow a gigantic revolving line of credit that made it look like he was rich and feel like he was rich. So he felt like he had nothing to lose. He felt like he could scam enough money to live out his days in his style no matter what happened. So he did it. No one else is willing to risk that. But now, of course, that's been validated and somebody else might be willing to risk it, like David Duke next. But somehow luckily, thankfully, we were poisoned against David Duke in particular for a while anyway.
Yeah.
So the point is, they got what they wanted.
Yep.
By voting, by voting for the ridiculous clown who would say those things. There was a lot of the things that you say. Of course, those voters will think whoever espouses your values that closely will also look to them like a ridiculous clown. Well, don't worry about that anymore, I guess, is the answer. But, for all the people, this is the message of the Trump election, is that for all the people who figured there's no way anybody like me or anybody who acknowledges me would do it, and my vote doesn't count anyway, they came out. A lot of Trump voters are first-time voters, and they may never come back except to vote for him. And in the meantime,
I think there's something to what you just said, because on some level, and I think there is some percentage of Trump's vote that is like this, they wanted him to win the election, not necessarily become the president.
That's true too. And there you say, you wanted validation, you got it. They announced he won the presidency. Now, if they had said, congratulations, you win, here's a prize, a trophy, but seriously,
he's not going to be the president.
They would have been okay.
Yeah, I think there's some hope based on that to me. They've been validated. Will they see Trump lose? Well, the good thing about 2018, Trump's not on the ballot.
Yeah.
So if Republicans lose, they're not going to feel disrespected.
Mm-hmm.
But 2020 becomes a question of whether they see Trump winning again as necessary for validation of their views. And that'll be an interesting point, but I do think it frankly depends on whether he completely screws up. Because the reality, and I'll say this right now, he's tried to do some horrible things, and he's done some horrible things with his cabinet, and they're probably going to do horrible things. But 3 weeks in, there's not one piece of legislation that's actually even been introduced that I know of that I'm saying that has to be stopped. It's sort of, we're sort of, in this weird limbo of cabinet nominations, which, basically it's going to be impossible to stop them. And, cabinet nominations go through. They always have. It's not like, these are huge, improbable wins by Trump. He's picked a terrible cabinet. That's what made it, so controversial. If he had just picked mainline, what if he picked Romney for Secretary of State and some run-of-the-mill Republican economists do Treasury and an actual Michelle Rhee type who is terrible, but you know what I mean? Is perceived as not crazy to do education. And instead of Tom Price, you know, some more mainstream Republican who wants to gut EPA, but sort of does it in a polite way. It would have just been, oh, well, he got his cabinet. Remember, right after the election, people were like, well, we'll try to find ways to work with them on infrastructure and yada, yada.
Yes.
But, you know, Trump, the worst thing Trump does in terms of image and just is these, in terms of his image with the public, is these crazy tweets and these crazy statements and these lies. He lies every day. It's interesting because he really did have an opportunity to pivot right after the election. But he's just not going to pivot.
Yeah.
That's who he is. And that's, you know, when will that manifest itself in actual government results? I don't know. We'll see. But, you know, what's Paul Ryan going to do? He's going to cut, he wants to do taxes. You know, when we eliminate the estate tax, which I know the white working class making $50,000 a year is just dying for that, right?
Yes. Well, we could win the lottery. You never know. Yeah.
And
I don't know why but they seem enthused about it for whatever reason, believe it or not. Because the guy that they think is on their wavelength says it would be good for everybody. So they say, all right.
I have a bank shot theory on that. They see cutting taxes as a good way to take stuff away from people who aren't white. So,
that's an extraordinarily sophisticated view of things. I mean, it's been around for quite a while. It may have sunk to that level where people now who otherwise are politically less sophisticated understand that cutting taxes means lower revenues for the government. Lower revenue for the government, if you are a balanced budget type, means having to cut services along the way. I mean,
but not the white services. Understand that.
Well, right, but that's not.
This is where Ryan has a big problem if his whole idea is tied to touching Social Security and Medicare. Those are white services.
Yes, that's true. Although if they're white services, then they're not services. They're just
exactly.
They just are.
Keep your government hands off my Medicare.
Yeah.
Being the classic, but that's Ryan's problem. And you know, I actually think Trump's not going to go along with it, and they're just going to run big deficits.
That could be.
I mean, they'll cut welfare and they'll cut Medicaid.
Yeah, it would take a lot less to move Republicans off of being budget hawks and deficit hawks than it would take to move Trump off of his position. They're about ready to abandon it anyway. They've regularly abandoned it. The 8 years of the Bush administration.
No, exactly, in the Reagan administration.
Yeah.
I mean, they've never, when push comes to shove, look, that's just an immutable fact. Most of the money that the government spends is in three programs. You know, and the third way is right. Defense spending, healthcare, Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. Now, Social Security is funded through a dedicated tax, and so is Medicare. So in theory, it's off budget, right? But of course, that's not how it works, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
When we calculate the deficit, we count all those tax revenues and the general revenue on FICA. So it's not possible. We don't actually do that much in the welfare state. There is some education spending, but in the scheme of things, it's just a drop in the bucket. The big money is defense, Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. That's 65-70% of the budget, right?
Yeah, I would assume.
So what are you going to cut? Reagan cut,
foreign aid,
welfare and education funding to the bone as much as he could, but that's just a drop in the bucket. And if you put in tax cuts, forget about it.
Yeah.
So, deficit hawks will be few and far between. There'll be none. Whatever happened to Pete Peterson, right?
Still floating around. No readily, immediately apparent answers in any of this.
No, I mean, again, it's, it's hard to win 3 presidential elections in a row. It doesn't happen very often. We did actually win it by the popular vote, and yes, it does matter. And I understand the problems we have. What's the source of the problem? How do you solve the problem? I do think people are deluding themselves, but listen, I don't have any answers. So let's try their delusion. But let's try it once, and if it fails, then what? I think people, they need to be willing to say they were wrong, too. We don't know if they're wrong or right. I have an opinion that they are. They have an opinion that they aren't wrong. But everybody should be open to possibly being wrong. Hopefully I am wrong, and we don't have to do anything except be nice to them. Maybe that's all it's going to take. I doubt it.
Mm-hmm.
But if that's all it takes, great. You guys go be nice to those people. Keith Ellison, the black Muslim, go talk to those white working class voters in the Rust Belt, and I'm sure you are going to get it done.
Well, the thing about him is he's willing to do that. He would do that, and it's an amazingly brave thing to do. And he might laugh at that and say, "What's so brave about it?" But okay, look,
whatever it
play
is,
on that.
I mean, try
by
it.
All means, wear it as a badge of honor. I think you're a brave guy, and really, honestly, almost all politicians, just to get out there and ask people to vote for you is kind of. It's too much for me, so it doesn't take much to make me think you're brave, I guess, but I say it nonetheless.
Yeah, well, let's find out what happens, because you talk about this failed Democratic Party, and you.
I do not.
And
others do.
Others do. And it's Glenn Greenwald piece this morning is really
okay. Well, that'll always
nonsense. But think of it. Okay, so the failed Democratic Party is the one that gets the most votes and has the best policies and has the best performance by our presidents. I mean, that's just the way it's happened. Maybe it's circumstance, maybe it's luck, but basically Democrats do better when governing than Republicans. They've always, in my lifetime, and I'm going back to, well, I guess maybe Eisenhower, but that doesn't even count. He doesn't even count as a Republican anymore, and I don't even know how to gauge that. But, since LBJ, Nixon, Reagan, Bush 41 did good things, I thought, in foreign policy, but, he didn't really get it done in terms of the domestic economy. George W. Bush was an absolute disaster, and, this doesn't bode well with Trump. I mean, he doesn't know what he's doing. I mean, that story about him calling Flynn at 3 a.m.
Yes.
Hey, is a strong dollar good or is a weak dollar good?
Yes, I was rather amazed by that.
But the thing that's funny about the call itself was amazing. That Trump didn't know is not amazing.
I don't know.
It's totally predictable.
Well, yes, in that he's actually an idiot. It's the only part that's amazing about it is for the people who learned about him on television and said, "Oh, he's an amazing businessman," which is the kind of person you would ordinarily think knows all about dollars in every aspect and would not have to ask anybody.
He doesn't know anything. I'm not, he might know the real estate business a little bit, but I'm not even sure about that. It wasn't like he was successral at the real estate business.
I mean, he knows
he was
the real
a failure
estate business in terms of
business.
what you have to do to build a building is acquire some land. I know that. And here's some different ways of doing it. I know 6 different ways of structuring the acquisition deal. Okay, fine. I know you have to have this, you got to have that, you got to have, and you got to work with the labor guys, and you got to work with the permitting guys in the Building and Construction Trades Council on top of all of that, plus the local government. That all is knowing the real estate business. But the idea of him having some kind of Midas touch on everything and making everything he starts work is not only probably wrong about almost anybody, but exactly the opposite of true for him in particular. He all he's got is a history of acquiring very flashy things in the worst possible way. I mean, if you don't know anything about business or investing or anything like that, you literally know nothing. I'm going to go along with Chris Arnade on one of his trips. I'm going to ask the people, what do you got to do to be successful in investing? Seriously. I mean, have you ever heard any kind of throwaway garbage line that they say on TV all the time? Yeah. Buy low, sell high. Right. He doesn't do that.
He does
so
the opposite.
How dumb is he?
He buys high and then has the creditors take it away from him.
Yeah. He took his dad's money and he decided, I want to buy more high profile things. His dad was in a very unglamorous business and did it in a very disgusting way, of course, but the very unglamorous business of building low and middle income housing and then being a landlord, renting to people and then taking their money every month.
He knew his business though.
But it's lucrative. No one needs to tell anybody. I don't think that it's lucrative if your job is collecting as many low and middle income people in one place as possible and forcing them to pay you every month. It's tough work because people sometimes run out of money and then you got to go be tough on them. But it's a pretty good source of income. Thousands of people pay you every month. Right, fine. So then he took that money and he said, I can make more by being flashy. I can buy casinos, buy high rises, build buildings that I sell to rich people for enormous chunks of money that will make me richer. As it turns out, it doesn't make you richer, but by that point he was invested in looking like he was the richest guy in the world. So he had a rotating series of credit lines that he'd open, drain, default on, and hand off to a shell corporation to close. And then, get one bank. If you just risk it on me one more time, Bank A, give me $1 million. And then they use it to pay Bank B and then take out another loan from Bank C to tell them, yes, I'm going to pay Bank A with this, but along the way, I'm also going to make $1 billion and pay you back too. And then he does it. All it is he's his own Bernie Madoff. He runs his own pyramid schemes. His talent, such as it is tap dancing for the public while he moves other people's cash in and out of various accounts and then suckers other people. And how can you do this forever? How can you do this over the period of 30, 40 years? And really, actually, the answer comes from yesterday's news that the Trump Tower in Toronto is in such trouble. If you read that article, it will mirror. So is the
one in Vancouver.
Yeah, it will mirror what you've read about every single one of his latter-day deals, which is they are buildings that are slapped together and financed by financing that's slapped together largely by Russians because they're actually looking to launder ill-gotten mob money that way. They put up a building, and the deal is I will give Trump X amount of dollars to put his name on the building and X amount of dollars per month, because he knows that getting paid every month is worthwhile, for a management fee, which is I will continue to allow you to call this the Trump Tower. That's the extent of the management. Oh, and the letters should be this big and this gold in order to get me to continue to allow you to use my name. But but the whole idea is the Russian investors there know that they can play off of The Apprentice and the pictures in the paper of him with golden chairs and golden walls and golden everything and say, Trump, Trump, Trump. He's the guy with the magic Midas touch. Buy yourself a condo in one of these things. It's the ultimate in luxury. Donald Trump himself approves of how luxurious this is. And people buy because they figure, all right, it actually isn't that luxurious. I noticed that the gold that I thought was on the walls fell off, and it's just contact paper. But it doesn't matter because there's always going to be a market for this garbage. When I decide to get out, some other idiot will buy it because The Apprentice, Trump, and now president. He's president. That's big. That's fancy. People love it. The Trump Tower in Toronto, also put up by Russians, amazingly, is apparently full of Canadian Korean immigrants. And the lawyers in the case, they interview everybody they interviewed. Many cases they bought the units to then sublet. But they asked all the people who are in this suit and losing money, well, this thing lost money almost immediately. You're almost immediately bankrupted by this. Why did you buy this? And in most cases, the article was saying they spoke very little English. All they would say to me over and over again as I'm interviewing is Trump, The Apprentice, TV, USA. That's what it is. And you just find enough of those people. You put a Trump tower in every city where there's a ridiculous, gullible population. Get the Russians to finance it because they don't care if they lose half the money. They're laundering it. It's not an investment. It's laundering. So they don't care that they put $10 million in and get $5 million out. That's $5 million clean dollars they didn't have access to before. Yes, there's a 50% premium, but the money was locked up. I stole $10 million worth of rubles. I can't do anything with it. Turn it into $5 million clean U.S. dollars. I'm rich. So they don't care that they lose that money, and they certainly don't care that the investors or the people who buy the units don't make any money. The guy has no business career. He has no business acumen. And even if he had, we've discussed over the past couple of days, he doesn't have Fortune 500 level business success. He doesn't know how to run anything except to run around and bluster and yell at people to give him money. And if they don't give it to him, he sues them. Bad president. And hey, who can't relate to that if you've been laid off for 3 years, right? You just go to people and you say, I am rich, and therefore you should give me more money. Somehow oh yeah, he's with me. You know what else? The other day, the hand towels weren't soft enough for him on his new private jet. But man, that guy feels my pain.
Yeah.
Whatever. I don't know. I'm not telling anybody anything new now. But
No, I mean, it's so, yeah.
I might as well get off of this and on to some of the other articles that we had, which, will bring us back to reality.
Yeah, I'm going to give your show back to that.
Well, I wanted you to get a chance
Greg got my goat this
morning. Sure. Well, and he often does. And you know what? I think we have a lot of competing constituencies listening to the show who need to hear all of this. And they say, yes. I think some of that is right. And I think some of that is right. Now what am I going to do? Well, I don't know. I'll unite you in rage against Trump again, though, by reading you the news. How about that?
Thank God for Trump. That way we can all get along.
I guess so. Your papers
all right, I'll just sit back and listen. Thanks
all right.
for letting me vent.
Sure. Thanks very much, Armando. Okay, so let's see. Where should we turn first? Well, how about this? Let me give you this one. A New York Daily News piece that sounds like it might be of some interest, just in terms of who they spoke to for this one. Title here, When a President is Unable to Serve. 50 years ago, the 25th Amendment, this is all the title, by the way. 50 years ago, the 25th Amendment codified the process for removing the chief executive. You know, we've all been talking about that. So who are they doing? What are they doing here? They're printing an article written by John Feerick. And it was billed to me as they have a little blurb at the bottom about who he is. Maybe we can go right to that. Feerick teaches a clinical course on presidential succession at Fordham Law School, where he's a full-time professor and former dean, and apparently had a hand in the formulation of the 25th Amendment. What a good person to talk to, I think. So let's read through this. Since this is on all of our minds, let's talk to somebody who knows about the mechanics and the hows and whys. Why did they adopt this process? It'd be worth knowing. The question of what it means for the president to be disabled reaches back to the Constitutional Convention of 1787. The framers envisioned that a presidential inability might occur, but they did not define the word or provide a way to declare its existence. That would be an extraordinarily difficult thing to do. You might regret that they didn't do it, but think about the task of formulating a constitution at that point, and certainly knowing that it would, reach into the future, and you couldn't tell what kind of people or what kind of technology. You certainly couldn't predict everything. But even so, even if you could, that's not the job of a constitution writer. A little bit of editorial content here. You got to do it in broad strokes, and the best you can do is anticipate that there will be problems and lay out a process for solving them that makes institutional and democratic, to the extent that their institutions were democratic, in many cases they weren't, that makes some kind of institutional and democratic sense. They weren't going to solve every problem, even by thinking it through. Anyway, 50 years ago tomorrow, the Constitution was amended to elaborate on the framers' treatment of the issue. The 25th Amendment responded to presidential deaths and illnesses. We had some experience with that at this point. that exposed ambiguities and gaps in the Constitution's original succession provision. As we mark this momentous anniversary of the ratification of the amendment, which I helped draft, not me, but John Farrick, it is worth reflecting on why there was a need to change the nation's founding document and what we accomplished by doing so. 8 presidents died in office prior to the 25th Amendment's ratification on February 10, 1967. 4 from illness and 4 by assassination. The first came in 1841 when President William Henry Harrison passed away, highlighting a constitutional ambiguity that called into question whether Vice President John Tyler would become president or serve as acting president. I'm sure that the founders thought that they had squared that one away. But apparently not. Tyler asserted that he succeeded to the office of president for the rest of the term. Others said that to do so would prevent a president, in a case of temporary inability, from resuming his powers and duties because under the succession provision, the procedures were the same for cases of death, resignation, removal, and inability. Tyler prevailed, setting a precedent that would complicate future disability crises. Interesting. I mean, they must have said, well, for this purpose, who cares? Harrison's not getting any better. He's dead. But true. What about temporary inability? And they probably thought that they had covered everything, and they didn't think about what about if they get better? And I'm sure at the time too, they also thought, well, surely then the vice president would step aside. I mean, you wouldn't just cling to power. Well, now of course we know possibly could be different. Anyway, Tyler's actions loomed over the aftermaths of the assassination attempt on President James Garfield in 1881 and the major stroke that President Woodrow Wilson suffered in 1919. Both presidents were severely impaired, Garfield for more than 2 months until his death, and Wilson for perhaps as long as 19 months. But neither stepped aside or was removed from the discharge of their powers and duties, in part because Tyler's precedent suggested their vice presidents might become president for the remainder of the term, regardless of whether they recovered from their disabilities. Additionally, the lack of constitutional procedures for declaring the president disabled likely made the vice presidents especially hesitant to assume the president's powers and duties. In the wake of the Kennedy assassination in 1963, members of Congress were shaken to action by the possibility that Kennedy could have been incapacitated by the shooting, essentially repeating the Garfield and Wilson episodes. Those situations were troubling enough, but the Cold War and the increased prominence of the United States in the world had made able presidential leadership indispensable. Too bad we seem to have screwed that one up right now. But again, that's why we're reading this. The 25th Amendment was an extraordinary achievement thanks to the leadership of Senator Birch Bayh of Indiana and Representative Emanuel Seller of New York, and the thoughtful contributions of members of Congress from both parties. Well, that was nice, I'm sure. The American Bar Association and a special conference it convened, of which I was a member, provided support in crafting the amendment and then supporting its adoption. Back in the days when the Bar Association actually aided in the production of what was actually model legislation. This, of course, being not legislation, but a constitutional amendment, as opposed to the garbage that, for instance, the ALEC group puts out and calls model legislation. But we've been over that. The amendment made clear that when the president dies, resigns, or is removed, the vice president becomes president for the rest of the president's term. Simple enough, right? That makes some sense. Dies, resigns, that I'm not like resigning for 2 weeks, right? Or is removed. Removed is over. So, when the president's disabled, though, the amendment is clear that the vice president serves as acting president only for the duration of the inability. The president can declare his own inability and resume his powers and duties when he believes he's able again. Where the president cannot make or communicate a decision as to his capacity, the amendment authorizes the vice president and a majority of the cabinet to declare the president disabled. Now we're talking. Because, of course, it's funny, when they contemplated this 50 years ago, of course, well, what about when the president can't make or communicate a decision as to his capacity? Oh, you mean like he's had a stroke and he can't speak? Yeah, like that. Okay, all right, that makes some sense. So we'll have the vice president then and a majority of the cabinet declare it. And I wonder whether anybody even brought this up. What about this? What about he can speak fine? I mean, he can speak okay. But what about he's a complete buffoon and off his rocker and simply refuses to communicate a decision as to his capacity? One, because he believes he's capable, and he's not. Or two, because he's never going to say anything about him being unable to do anything. It's just not, he's so narcissistic that he'd never admit his inability. And I assume if that was brought up, everybody laughed and said, that guy would never become president. How could you ever get people to support you? Well, okay, it happened. So it's important to talk about. If the president disagrees with that determination, so they did think about it, right? No, I'm not incapacitated. I'm terrific. I'm better than I've ever been. In fact, I'm better than anyone else. I alone can handle this job. If the president disagrees with that determination, Congress must resolve the issue in 21 days. The president is allowed to return to his powers and duties unless 2/3 of both houses of Congress agree with the determination of the president, the vice president, and the cabinet. So 2/3, that's a taller order. 2/3 of both houses, actually a taller order than impeachment, which requires only a majority in the House to pass the articles of impeachment, and then 2/3 to convict and remove in the Senate. But 2/3 of both houses, well, okay, but that's a much, why would they do that? Well, because you'll be having a fight as between the branches, really, as to whether or not the president is incapacitated. It is sort of a different thing. Whereas, say, for instance, for the, I would argue, clearer cut question of, is the president guilty of some high crime or misdemeanor? You know, he's been indicted by a majority vote in the House, and now to be convicted and removed will take, that's the important part, take 2/3 of the Senate. So the hard part still requires 2/3, but now both parts require 2/3. But again, I guess if you're going to remove the president through no fault of his own, incapacity, then perhaps a higher standard would apply. And in that way, of course, you'd have to have much wider spread agreement of the incapacity. And now that begins to make a certain amount of sense. When the incapacity is his mental state, and that's a judgment call in many cases. I mean, he can do some pretty bizarre things and still justify it through the political parties and the tribalism. But if you can convince 2/3 of the Congress that you're just cuckoo, well then, I guess that'll do the trick. Anyway, let me continue with the article. Finally, the amendment lets the president fill a vacancy in the vice presidency with approval from a majority of both houses of Congress. There's this important final detail as well. Inability remains undefined in the Constitution. The 25th Amendment states that its procedures apply when the president is, quote, unable to discharge the powers and duties of the office. So that poses some kind of a problem, right? He is, in some sense, able to discharge the powers and duties of the office. That's the problem. He can physically discharge the powers and duties of the office. The problem is that he's not mentally up to being left in charge of the powers and duties of the office. The article continues, the drafters of the amendment intended it to cover physical and mental inability, temporary or permanent, as well as events where the president is out of communication, such as kidnappings and technological failures, interestingly enough. But they did not give a specific definition in order to provide flexibility to the constitutional decision makers. Interesting as well. All right, and that's actually where we wind up with this article, and it makes you realize kind of what you're up against. Just to connect it back to what we were discussing in the earlier part of the show, both with Greg and with Armando, I guess the big difficulty, and I guess the reason that they set up this 2/3 hurdle is that, at this point in time, things that to you and me represent very clear mental disability and a lack of trustworthiness with the powers and duties of the office represent at the same time we're watching the same facts, but two different witnesses see them differently. There are plenty of Trump voters, still a narrow slice, thankfully, but enough of them to get the job done, at least, unless some of them were somehow Russian hacks. Who knows? Still don't know about that one. But we view it as obvious signs of mental instability and untrustworthiness for the job, and they view it as, no, that's exactly why we do trust him for the job. He's just as crazy as I am. Of course, I don't use the word crazy to describe myself. I'm salt of the earth. I got a pickup truck. My ideas about the Amero and the Agenda 21 coming in here and taking over all our golf courses are on the nose. So that stuff that you call crazy, I call insight. Well, you got to get 2/3 of the country, and their representatives anyway, to realize that this is nonsense. And by the way, with the current makeup of Congress, yeah, that's a problem because a lot of them are conspiracy theory nuts. It's a little bit weird. I think we can say that. All right, let's see. What else might we enter into the record here? Let's see. Brian Monroe has sent us an interesting contribution here, although since we're running low on time, perhaps we will toss that in on our Friday show. But he's pointing me to a Steve Bannon piece from about a year ago, as a matter of fact. And I guess that's what makes it so interesting, really, is the fact that it's about almost exactly a year old. What's today? February 9th. Ta-da! February 9th, 2016, this was written. And by the way, since we're time traveling here, 3 years to the first in the nation caucuses, if they still exist next time around, and primaries, right? It's flying by, people. All right. Well, I'll tell you what the title of this piece is, by the way. Conservative pundit. Obama's integrity, quote, taken for granted. That is interesting, and that harkens back to part of our earlier discussion. I'll read the first paragraph or two. It's not a hugely long article. Maybe we can plow through it, and then we'll bring you up to date on one more piece of current news for the day. Steve Bannon again writing here. With less than a year remaining in Barack Obama's presidency, many observers at that time were already focusing on the substantive elements of his legacy. Ending the Great Recession, bringing affordable health care to millions, rescuing the auto industry, restoring the nation's international credibility, and so on. All those things that sucked, and he never did any of them, and he was a dictator and a socialist. Never got better, right? But every president is judged not only by what they accomplish in office, but also what they bring to the presidency itself. What kind of people were they? What kind of leadership qualities did they demonstrate? How did they conduct themselves in one of the world's most difficult jobs? Well, we learned the answer earlier, right? 0, 0, and 0. The criminal activity, criminal convictions, jail sentences, etc. Steve Bannon here writes, the New York Times' David Brooks, in the midst of a mild panic about what's become his Republican Party, devoted his column today, a year ago, to the underappreciated facet of the Obama era, the president's capacity for dignity and grace. The center-right columnist, not surprisingly, makes clear he disagrees with many of his policy decisions, but Brooks says he's going to miss this president anyway. Over the course of his campaign, it feels as if there's been a decline in behavioral standards across the board. This campaign, rather. Many of the traits of character and leadership that Obama possesses and that maybe we've taken too much for granted have suddenly gone missing or are in short supply. Obama radiates an ethos of integrity, humanity, good manners, and elegance that I'm beginning to miss, and that I suspect we will all miss a bit, regardless of who replaces him, but especially if it's Trump. Brooks's compelling case highlighted the president's integrity, ability to maintain remarkably scandal-free administration, sense of basic humanity, soundness in his decision-making process, grace under pressure, and resilient sense of optimism. It's a welcome assessment, not just because it's a Republican pundit praising a Democratic president, but because Brooks is entirely right about this aspect of the Obama era being taken for granted, though once he leaves office, that's likely to change. At the White House Correspondents' Dinner a couple of years ago, Obama directed a joke at a certain cable news network. Let's face it, Fox, you'll miss me when I'm gone. The point, of course, was that the Republican-friendly network had taken great pleasure in attacking the president, and once he's left office, those opportunities will have passed. But that line stood out for me, or for Steve Bannon anyway, because Obama might as well have been talking about the political world overall, because quite a few folks are likely to miss the president once he's left the stage for more reasons than one. I include congressional Republicans among them, by the way. Sure, GOP lawmakers have nothing but contempt and disgust for the president, whom they hate with the heat of 1,000 suns. But whether they realize it or not, now Obama has gone to almost comical lengths to compromise with them, meet them halfway on contentious issues, search for common ground, avoid questioning their motives or patriotism, and offer policy measures that were designed to appeal to the mainstream of both parties before the radicalization of the Republicans anyway. I can't say with any confidence what will happen on Election Day 2016, but I can say if President Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders is inaugurated next year, his or her attitude toward Republicans will probably be less accommodating and less deferential than the current president's. Didn't even anticipate the opposite. More than a few GOP leaders on Capitol Hill might want to refer back to Brooks's column when they find themselves saying, maybe Obama wasn't such a bad guy after all, which they might be saying now, but I don't know. Anyway, we'll use that to set the table for some of the immediate current news items, which you have no doubt heard about already, but we will mention for the record, at least for the show. Kellyanne Conway plugging Ivanka Trump's line today, post Nordstrom-pocalypse, I guess. We have to fight the terrorists in Nordstrom. We've always been at war with them, of course. The president stepping way out of line, of course, using his official POTUS Twitter handle, which really Barack Obama should never have handed that over. I guess it's his sense, that was exactly it. It's his sense of integrity that belongs with the office. But I mean, look, it's a Twitter handle. We don't know these things. We haven't got any settled law on these things. Someone in your office, I guess maybe that's it. Because somebody on staff established it and he didn't do it himself, there's really no claim to it being personal property. Had it been the other way around, had Twitter not been invented, I guess, until Trump was president, he would certainly consider that to be his personal property. Anyway, he certainly treated it like personal property yesterday in tweeting out his complaints about Nordstrom. Kellyanne Conway today saying, just coming right out and saying, I'm going to plug her stuff. Everybody should go buy her clothing line. And I think that they get away with that one because no one knows what to do with it. The options are so limited for the people who have any say in any of this. All right, let's see. We also wanted to hit on a couple other issues, and my Friday show is beginning to line up with some interesting esoterica. Let's throw this one in there, though, just because I thought it would make a good addition to yesterday's show. Didn't get to it. Let's throw it in there. One of our good friends from Daily Kos, who you'll know in his blogging as A. Siegel, not a seagull like the bird, but Siegel, S-I-E-G-E-L. It's Adam Siegel. His first name, that's the A. I don't think I'm giving anything away in that one. But he brought to my attention a piece he put up just yesterday on the issue of the millions being spent to secure Trump Tower while Melania and Barron live there, and of course as the president visits on weekends. Trump Tower security funding is a big deal, but he compared it to funding for real programs for real Americans. In other words, what could the money that's being spent on securing Trump Tower now be spent on if we had a normal person in the presidency instead? An interesting question. Barron Trump's elementary school education might just rank as the most expensive educational program in world history, bar none. Very interesting in the wake now of the confirmation of our new education secretary, who, by the way, I was amused to see tweeting after her first day on the job, a dramatic black and white picture of herself that's supposed to humanize her along with the tweet. First day of the job is done here, but now if I could just find where they keep the pencils, and a little smiley face emoticon. And two people I noticed had the very same reaction, which was a very good one. Wanted to share it with you. You've probably seen it by now. Yeah, in education, it's the teachers have to buy their own classroom supplies. The Secretary of Education should have to do the same. But she will have no experience with that because, of course, she knows nothing about actual school operations. Anyway, back to Adam's piece here. Forget the $45,000 or so of annual tuition bill on Bannon's private education. The security tab for maintaining Melania and Barron Trump in New York City so as not to disrupt his elementary school program mid-year, and I'm okay with that, by the way, is somewhere between $2 million to $4 million day in and day out. That's the part, of course, that's actually disturbing. I'd like, if it didn't cost anything, to be able to... keeping the kid in his school is important. But, Anyway, just imagine this. America's taxpayers are going to shell out somewhere in the range of $350 million to $700 million for security costs just for Barron to finish out this school year. That is a bit troubling, isn't it? And if this situation continues for 4 years, we're talking perhaps $2.8 billion to up to $6 billion plus for this security. So yeah, that's right. Maintaining them in New York City could cost taxpayers $6 billion. This easily ranks as one of the great absurdities in U.S. government expenditures in U.S. history. A huge expenditure that is seemingly being accepted by our political leadership without serious question. And it's hard to question it, particularly when it revolves around Barron. There is that problem. But still, money is money. And $6 billion, nothing to sneeze at. What could we be doing with it? Well, of course, we could be building schools. School districts in the United States spent more than $14 billion on construction projects alone, completed during the 2014 calendar year. Almost $7.8 billion on that spent on new schools, accounting for 55% of the construction dollars. That would be covered. The amount of money being expended on Trump Tower security could boost total spending on school construction by over 10%. Take a gander, he says, at just how many new schools could be built with the cost to taxpayers of keeping Barron Trump in private New York City schools. 400 new elementary schools at $15 million each. 240 middle schools, 133 high schools. 275 total schools across the nation could be built with the money we're spending instead on keeping them ensconced in their golden tower. And that's just one area. What about clean energy investments? What about college education? What about public broadcasting? All of that detailed in here. I'll give you a link, of course, in our roundup. You should take a look through it. It might give you some ideas to expand on this theme yourself. Okay, we'll be back tomorrow, Friday show. Always esoteric stuff to add in there. Some things political and esoteric, other things not. And I imagine at this point we'll take a third crack, perhaps, at explaining to anybody who still has questions about exactly how Rule 19 really works in the Senate. The short answer, by the way, is Rule 19 in the Senate is like impeachment in the House. Rule 19 is what the Senate says it is. And so if they want to say that a particular person saying something at this time is a violation of the rules, but another person saying the exact same thing at another time is not, they can. They will. They did. You saw it. That's how it works. It's basic majoritarian politics. But oh my God, don't turn the Senate into the House. Newsflash, the Senate has always been the House. Okay. Well, it's time to hand over the microphones to the guys getting ready with the after show. And if I can hit the right buttons, I can tell you a little bit about what's coming up. It's Thursday. That means, thank God, it's Jovadi version of the show. Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, CREW, has offered Nordstrom and other companies help in suing Trump under the California unfair competition law. An overlooked provision of Trump's executive order revives the program that deputizes police to start deportations. And after Trump's remarks to the military, Air Force Chief of Staff says military oath to defend the Constitution.
On NetworksRadio.com.
And not your dear leader against those enemies, foreign and domestic.
To the Kagro in the Morning Show.
With David Waldman.
On the last afternoon discussion on an actual case of greenwashing, Facebook's new highly touted clean energy server farm will instead increase greenhouse gas emissions. How do you like that? And the McConnell gag rule for Elizabeth Warren is going to be talked about in its historical context. You'll want to stay tuned for that. I'll see you tomorrow.